Welcome to the Turd Nerds. We are the functional gastroenterology podcast discussing all things poop. Before we take the plunge into today's episode, let us tell you a bit about ourselves. I'm Dr. Rebecca Sand, a naturopathic physician and acupuncturist, and I specialize in all things gastroenterology, hormones, and fertility.
I'm Dr. Ami Kapadia, and I'm a medical doctor trained in family medicine and functional medicine with a special interest in gastrointestinal health, food and environmental allergies, and autoimmune disease.
And I'm Dr. Ilana Gurevich, a naturopathic physician and acupuncturist who is board certified in naturopathic gastroenterology. I specialize in inflammatory bowel disease, IBS, and other functional digestive disorders. Let's jump into today's episode.
The following discussion is for educational purposes only and not intended to diagnose or treat any diseases or conditions. Please consult your doctor before incorporating any of this information into your care. The information presented on this podcast is not medical advice.
Welcome back, Turd Nerds, for our second installation of the diet series. Our first installation, we kind of talked about a consistent framework that we all believe all patients should be following. It's as close to an all diet in one as we're ever going to get.
Still not for everyone, but we hit the basics.
This time we're going to go into what are the therapeutic diets we're using?
Yeah.
Why are we using them? What works? What doesn't? And actually, when we were in our quote unquote green room, i.e. not recording, but in the same room, one of the things that came up is soluble fiber, insoluble fiber, what's for what, which is what. So Dr. Sand, can you just break down what you tell patients about this?
Totally. Yeah. And where we left off was putting people on a high protein diet makes them constipated. So we need the fiber, but what are we doing with fiber if we really have to optimize to get people pooping so they're not also constipated? So fiber can be broken down into a couple categories. We've got soluble fiber, we've got insoluble fiber, we've got fermentable versus non-fermentable fiber. The fact of the matter is we need all of it, but some types are going to work better with certain bodies. So who knows the difference between soluble and insoluble? Any guesses?
Soluble, your body absorbs and uses elsewhere. Insoluble just stays on the intestinal tract and acts like a scrubby brush?
Yeah, kind of.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So soluble attracts water and turns it into a gel. So that's goopy stuff. This can actually slow digestion if we're not careful with it. So think of psyllium. If we have it with enough water and that gel can move, it will cause the nice goopy stuff that gets bowels to form and easily lubricate out. Then we've got insoluble, which bulks stool and can help increase transit, making stool easier to pass, and it is like a brush. So this is really important for colon cleansing. That's going to be our wheat bran, some vegetables, whole grains, things like that.
So psyllium is 100% soluble.
They're all a little bit of a mix. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but most of them are a little
So
bit
flax is soluble?
So here's a list of soluble. We've got psyllium, oat bran, barley, most nuts and seeds, beans, lentils, peas, other fruits and veggies.
Those are soluble?
Mm-hmm. Not across the board, but generally that's a list you want to think of. But again, there's crossover with everything. And then insoluble, again, we've got classic examples are wheat bran, whole grains generally will contain more of that, but some veggies also have that. So interestingly, you know how the American College of Gastroenterology came out with these consensus statements on IBS? They recommended soluble for IBS. That was what they thought worked the best, which is interesting because it tends to slow digestion. And in my opinion, most of the focus on those consensus statements were IBS with diarrhea.
That's what it sounds like.
But you guys said in previous episodes, you do use psyllium for IBS-C too, as long as they're drinking tons of water.
I love it for constipation.
Yeah.
I do too.
It works. Again, could put me out of business. Everyone's heard me say this. Enough water and enough psyllium husk.
I also am just going to say that since sitting in this room, talking to Dr. Sand, I have started using the capsules.
Yes.
And I do
compliance is higher.
For some people, yes.
Yeah. It's disgusting. The powder is disgusting. Yes. It's so gross. I have some champs that will do it, but I'm okay, give me 6 months, you won't be on it anymore. Not to not have faith in people. So what about fermentable versus unfermentable?
Okay. Tell me what I don't know.
Oh, I think flax is fermentable and chia, maybe?
A lot of them are fermentable.
Okay.
Which is not bad.
Yeah.
That actually produces, it helps with the production of short-chain fatty acids, and it can help decrease inflammation. Good for the microbiome, all of that. But which of our patients might not do well with fermentable fibers?
The SIBO and such.
SIBO folks. Yeah. So in those folks, I really lean on the non-fermentable fibers.
Okay. Can we just back up for a minute?
Yep.
So fermentable fibers means what is going to sit in the GI tract and go through a fermentation
Yep.
If you have extra bacteria in the wrong place,
Or
it will
period.
cause potential
It
problems,
just
whereas
is gonna
otherwise it'll
add
be
to the
lower down.
gas load.
Okay.
It's going to add to the gas load. So fibers that do ferment in the colon actually are going to lose their water holding or bulking capacity. And of course can produce the gas that can cause bloating and indigestion. So for folks that are predisposed to that, for whatever reason you're working on their other stuff, I choose psyllium. It's usually my default in general, but I don't want to demonize those other fibers. In a healthy gut, we like the fermentable kind.
Because psyllium is not fermentable.
Correct.
What do you have a list of fermentable fibers?
I think I need this
Pretty much
handout.
all the others.
Okay.
So I believe
I need this handout
inulin
to give to
I'm pretty
patients.
sure Gower gum, and then like a lot of our foods will have fermentable properties. They're important because they increase short chain fatty acids. They help the microbiome, and like we definitely need them at some point. They just might not be tolerated by folks in distress.
In my experience, this is something that, while it might not be tolerated at first, over time, the microbiome will restore. It's the fermentable fibers that allow the microbiome to restore back to a normal, healthy.
Yeah, it's part of a good diet to like maintain a healthy microbiome and that short chain fatty acid production. We need that. The butyrate, all of that is very important for preventing colon cancer, all of that kind of stuff.
Also for mitochondrial function.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. So, but from the get-go, if you're just getting people to poop and you need it in a pill, psyllium. It's best tolerated by most people. Just don't do Metamucil.
Oh yeah,
because of all the additives.
Yes.
Yeah, the red number 4.
Don't see it act the same too.
Huh.
I don't know what happens in their processing, but it doesn't act the same.
It's so palatable though.
Blah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's better.
Yeah.
But take a pill.
Yeah.
Take a pill.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's fiber and how you can kind of optimize it. The goal ultimately is to get to diverse fibers. Like that is the foundation of a healthy microbiome.
I would say some products now they're putting inulin in as like a sweetener in a fiber, and those kill me and some other people. I get a lot of digestive upset.
Yep.
But you get gas
and bloating, and I just feel super uncomfortable. So I wonder if it's because of the amount they're putting in there as opposed to like normal amounts of inulin from like vegetable and fruits, like what's in normal foods, right?
You know, what's interesting is I was living with this other family and we buy stuff in bulk. And at some point somebody was doing a diet that involved inulin. So I ended up with all of this inulin in my house. And I was like, what do I do with this? Yeah. So I started adding it into my matcha latte.
And you're fine?
I love it.
Oh.
Very much. I think I'm probably adding a half a teaspoon, maybe a teaspoon.
What do you like about it?
It's sweet, right? Sweet. Yeah, I think it's sweet.
And it I'm using it in
I wouldn't poop.
It would stop you from pooping. Okay, I don't know if you have an answer for this, but resistant starches?
Yeah, they're good for you.
That's different, though. That's like white rice that's cooled and potatoes that are cooled.
What do?
Feeds the large intestine, right?
Yeah, it's good for feeding bacteria.
So, again, it's a fermentable starch. Is that what I'm hearing?
It should be. I believe so.
That's why we want it.
But that's different than, that's a whole different thing than inulin.
Right. No, I was just wondering.
Like the point of it?
Yeah. Like that's like if we're talking about like the newest dietary trend. Resistant starches are and I just didn't know. I know how you make them. I just didn't know what they did.
The reason they're called resistant is because they resist being broken down in the small intestine.
Okay.
So they're really good for the large intestine, which is, great, but for the large intestine and the cells there and the bulk of our microbiome, the diversity that's in the large intestine. So I think they just sort of like get to that point and can help there uniquely.
And you have to eat them? Like, I know it's like you put rice into the fridge.
Yep.
You have to eat it cold? Or you
can heat it up again. Yeah. So and potatoes too, but you don't need potatoes.
What I've had people do recently is boil a potato, freeze it. Like once it's cooled, put it in your freezer and then grate it into hash browns frozen.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That sounds delicious too.
I know. Yeah. I don't do it because I'm a lazy cook, but back to the butter. But it's a great option to get the resistant starches. They also can help with blood sugar control and lower the risk of certain types of cancer like colon cancer. Oh. So they're good for you. They're just a little more work.
But that's not fiber. It's not a fiber, most likely.
That's a resistant starch.
Which is different.
I don't know, actually.
They're carbs.
Yeah, so I guess there could be, it's probably part of it.
So let's talk about the therapeutic diets we're using.
Okay, what do we want to start with?
Maybe we start with something like the low FODMAP diet.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of data. It's been shown pretty effective for IBS patients.
Yep.
I have feelings about it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so why don't we start? What are your feelings about it?
It causes eating disorders.
That's kind of my feeling about it too. Okay.
Well, I think the idea was that you were supposed to do it for 4 to 6 weeks and then add stuff back. I think GI doctors tell people
see that.
Okay.
with that.
So I think the problem is people don't realize that it's not a long term.
Like
I don't like
it
putting
works,
people
you
on
keep
it.
them on it forever.
Yeah, I don't like putting people on it. I never have, because I thought it was just an odd thing to do.
I
Like
never
removing,
use it.
you know, that whole, I think I told you guys that one of these books that I had read a long time ago by one of the forefathers in functional medicine, like don't put someone on an unhealthy diet in pursuit of health. Like it just doesn't make sense. So it never made sense to me, and it starves the large intestine.
But on the flip side, it is effective.
And I think there was a study that said yoga was equally effective. So I was like, why don't you just do yoga?
There's also
psychotropics. I mean, it's not our only option.
Yeah.
But people love to control their diet because it's the only thing that they can do.
Yeah,
You know,
if they're having a lot of symptoms.
To get in and tell them, no, this is probably a microbiome imbalance, or this is probably brain-gut connection issue.
Yeah.
Like something is up that we can get to the root of and expand your diet. But until they know that and have that education, the only thing they have that's malleable is restricting their diet.
Right.
And yeah, you can get some symptom relief, but it's not fun.
I will also say the amount of eating disorder or fear, phobia of food that I see coming out of that is not any small matter.
It's not
worth
it.
It's too much.
And then once we fix it and people can tolerate these foods again, they're terrified to add it back in, which is fair. It worked, but like you can't associate a good gut with restricted eating.
And the other thing that happens is once they get off this very restrictive diet, all of their symptoms come back.
Yeah.
Like that is just what happens.
Yeah.
And so, but that is a diet that a lot of patients come in having already tried. Yep. And that is a diet that I personally am not a big fan of.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
I
neither.
don't think I ever use it. I don't think I ever recommend a low FODMAP.
I don't think I've ever recommended it. I've had people on it when they come, and then it's challenging to change it.
I recommend a Whole30.
Okay, so
that's a whole different thing, though. I feel like that's just kind of a reset, and I don't think it's overly restrictive.
So let's talk about first Whole30 and then second AIP, because I think they're different.
Yeah.
Or how about just removing junk for a while as another option?
Okay, so that's a loaded sentence.
Define junk.
Like Mediterranean diet, like whole foods Mediterranean diet.
Processed foods.
Removing processed foods and sugars, and just do that.
So your recommendation, and I will also just say, I was just reading a study. I get Cochrane review reports of like big meta-analyses that come out. And there was just a meta-analysis that I received looking at a bunch of different diets for inflammatory bowel disease patients, right? And they didn't tell us which one was better or worse. They were like, this diet has this data, this diet has this data, this diet has this data. Any diet study is always going to look at the Mediterranean diet, period, full stop.
Yeah.
The Mediterranean diet is high fiber, high vegetable,
fish,
lots of
whole grains,
poultry and
olive
fish.
oil.
Not a lot of it, but it's a part of the diet. Lots of olive oil,
nuts and seeds,
not processed.
Right.
That diet generally wins.
Yeah. Yep. That's why I want to go to that place in the Blue Zone show.
Yeah. Oh, in California or
in the Mediterranean.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go.
That's where I would like to. That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to work on that later.
Live report from it.
Goat cheese.
It's
fresh goat.
About that diet is it's got so much support. And that's the other thing about any of these things.
I think the most support probably.
Whatever we're doing, like whatever we're asking our patients to do, to be able to set them up for success, they need to have access to recipes, maybe to meal delivery services, maybe to blogs or whatever. CSA. Right. That inspires them.
Yeah.
And so Mediterranean diet, I think, is a very good place to start if they tolerate grains.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But however, if somebody's coming in to you with a bunch of GI issues and their whole diet is grains, not even ultra processed grains, just grains everywhere.
Just too much.
That could be causing their disease.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then that brings us to, let's talk about the Whole30 paleo AIP spectrum.
I love Whole30 for Candida or Candida.
Me
yeast.
too.
Yeah, I think it's like for my folks that just are living drenched in yeast, like once or twice a year, this is our reset that we do, and it seems to hold them.
And it removes all the junk. And I think you do you stay off of sweeteners in general?
Yes, no sweeteners. So the way I define a Whole30.
But you can have fruit.
Yes.
So that's kind of what we would do for the Canada.
The way that I would define a Whole30 is you can have basically whole foods.
Yep.
It's grain. It is a grain-free diet.
Right.
But you can have fruit, vegetables, meats, fishes,
Nuts and seeds.
Nuts, seeds, like anything that's real.
I'll modify it for like severe PMS, PMDD folks that in their luteal phase they can have whole grains.
Whole grains like brown rice?
Yeah. They tend to do better hormonally.
Yeah. And if they're vegetarian, they could probably do tofu tempeh.
So there is a vegetarian
because those are low.
Whole30,
yeah.
But it's very bean heavy.
Yeah.
Oh, really? So maybe you just substitute tofu and tempeh for the most of the proteins and maybe some dairy, like yogurt.
So when I did my Whole30, like my diet is, I am predominantly vegetable based. I just prefer vegetables over meat.
Right.
And then if I'm eating meat, I'm buying it myself. Like I buy a quarter cow or I buy a half lamb.
You go meet the farmer
I
do.
Shake hands with the cow.
So I did a vegan Whole30 because it's also vegan, no dairy. We remove dairy, including butter, but ghee is okay. That is one that I'm a little bit flexible with.
I could never do that.
Huh.
What's the point in living? Yogurt and butter is like my reason for being.
Oh yeah, you said that you put yogurt on everything.
You've seen me put when we got
that was weird. Yeah,
yum.
I remember that.
It's so good.
Okay, so basically, I did do a vegan Whole30.
Okay,
it was very bad for me.
Yeah, because of all the beans. Even if you soak them and pressure cooked.
I soaked.
You got through a whole month of that?
I couldn't. I had 2 weeks.
It's too many beans.
Then
I feel constipated just thinking about that.
Even eating beans constipate you?
I mean, if that's all I'm eating.
Well, I was eating vegetables.
It's the gases. When the colon starts spasming, it just, shuts down. Yeah. It's like, I'm out.
It's probably just, I mean, no one eats that many beans normally, probably. Like in a normal culture. There's other things involved.
Latin cultures?
But that much beans? There's other stuff going. I think you're eating enough other things that it's not like as much beans, You're probably eating some rice and some tortilla and other stuff, right?
So that was hard on my body.
Yeah.
The Whole30, I am with you. I do think it is a very, very good 30-day precise window to reset.
By definition, it's short term.
Yes. And you take everything out. You eat this really whole foods based diet that's protein based. Yep. And then I do a reintroduction every 3 to 4 days. Like let's put in this food. What did that do? Nothing. Okay, keep going. Next food, next food, next food. Yep. So that's a diet that for my IBS population, I will often lean on that type of diet. Also because it's very well supported.
Yep. Tons of resources.
Tons of resources. Not tons of research. But tons of resources.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Not tons of resources. I mean, it was basically made up by this person, and it was like, oh, this makes sense. And then they put it out, and they had great marketing.
I mean, it's basically the same as what we used to do for elimination diets, right? Except we didn't typically remove all whole grains for that. It would be like the glutinous grains and such. Yeah. But it's otherwise very similar to a typical elimination diet.
So then the next thing on that spectrum,
which I think does have quite a bit of research for several decades on IBD and IBS.
It's actually the gold standard. Like it is actually, and then allergies.
Hard.
Yeah,
it's just hard.
I can't do it.
Okay, so then we go to the next, which is AIP, autoimmune paleo, right?
Yeah, I don't love that one. People can't eat outside of their house usually. Right? So that's the tricky part with that one.
With Whole30, it's hard to eat.
Whole30, I feel like you can get by these days.
Portland,
you could get a protein, veggies. Yeah. I feel like that's not that hard to get these days.
The sauces are tricky.
I think.
Yeah, if you're going to be super strict.
It's great.
Yeah. I would definitely recommend it, right, if someone's super strict. Yeah, I mean, super sick.
IBD, also I have some people.
Yeah, especially in a flare, right?
Yeah.
Better than SCD?
So SCD is also on the specific carbohydrate diet. Yep. That comes out of Elaine Gottschalk's book that was from another doctor's data back in the 1940s. And there is actually data on SCD for IBD.
Yep.
Does it work for every IBD patient? No. I wish it did. Does it work for some? Yeah. For sure, some people can get control just by that.
I have a number of IBD patients that don't need to do the full thing either. They'll do like the yogurt or something like that, and they'll just kind of like bring the diet down, add in some elements, and if they're not deep into a flare, it'll kind of curve it, and then the full thing, for some people. But it's hard.
I would say AIP
starting
is
diet
very difficult. I would say SCD is very difficult. I would say Whole30 is moderately difficult, and Mediterranean diet is probably the easiest.
How long would you have someone on an SCD or AIP before you?
I would want them to go 4 to 6 weeks so we can make a choice. I believe that it's going to take about 3 weeks to reset the entire nervous system and microbiome. And then they start feeling better. So I'm not even expecting them to feel anything until the 3rd week.
When would you do like a calprotectin?
I like to do calprotectins 4 to 6 weeks into anything.
Even if they're not feeling any better?
Yeah, that's the tricky thing about diets and something subjective as how you're feeling and what's happening objectively is people are taking action. So they might falsely report that they're feeling better because they're like, I'm doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
I care about how they're feeling, but I also care about objectively what's happening in the GI tract.
Yeah, it's true.
And so, yes, even if they're not feeling better or even if they are feeling better.
Yeah.
AIP also takes out a lot of what we consider inflammatory foods. And so I think eggs are off that list.
Those are inflammatory?
In this diet, I think. But and I've seen it be effective, especially I think about those type of more extreme diets with more extreme disease.
Yeah.
Totally. If you're really not feeling well, then I want to use this therapeutic diet.
That makes sense.
If it's like more of a functional issue, I like the Whole30 reset. Anybody can do anything for a month. It also, the other thing that was interesting for me when I do my own, and I do these at least every year, is it really sheds light on my relationship to food.
Yeah, totally. It's a good reset for that too.
Yes.
Yep.
Like I am like, oh, I don't know what to eat. I'm going to take a piece of Ezekiel toast.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
our crutches.
Yeah. Like, yes, it has some fiber. Yes, it has some protein, but it's not like a good choice.
I mean, it's not a bad
choice.
Not a
bad choice.
No, but it's not like I want my diet to have lots of
right, nutrient dense.
Yeah, I think of you every time, and I'm just like,
I think you spent too much time in France. That's your problem.
Like good sourdough, with real butter.
I will say, Ami has lots of people have been like, "Let me clear you of your gluten intolerance."
Yeah,
and I was like, "I'm not interested."
I said that.
I'm sure you did. Yeah. You do allergy test, the slit test.
I don't think I recommended it, but you like having that, so you don't eat certain foods. Yeah. It's easy to get a piece of pizza otherwise.
Pizza.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you love some pizza?
I do with my Vincent's Pizzeria in New York.
Oof.
Okay, so then we've been promoting this for the last 2 episodes. Let's dive into the keto diet.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, I want to know about this depression link, Rebecca.
Okay, well, let me just start with what is a ketosis diet.
Yep.
So a keto diet is basically a high-fat diet. What happens in ketosis is the body stops using glucose because they're not getting any glucose in the diet and instead switches to running on ketones. This is not the same thing about going into a ketoacidosis. Like that is a dangerous, life-threatening metabolic event, right? This is you're pushing the body's fuel sources to move from glucose to ketones. It actually has a ton of data. Mm-hmm. Also, maybe as probably better stuff. Honestly, if we're honestly talking about data on diets for every condition, keto goes back to the 1920s and 30s
for kids with seizures,
with epilepsy.
Yeah,
yet not just kids, but it is still the most effective treatment compared to all of the pharmaceuticals for epileptic events.
Yeah.
So it has data going. So we also have a lot of safety studies on keto.
Yeah.
But it's a hard ass diet to do.
Yeah.
So, and you need to check if you're in ketosis by either urine or breath or blood. It's just difficult. It's a difficult diet to do. I tried to go keto. Mm-hmm. I was going to go for 10 days. After day 8, I was like grease licked. And
exactly.
It did not settle with my body.
As much as I love butter.
But this is a diet.
Need bread.
This is the diet that I actually utilize a lot.
Oh.
So I think that keto...
Short term?
Well, for a lot of people, yes.
Yeah.
In my opinion, if there is a mitochondrial component to your disease, which I can argue is most chronic diseases, then ketosis is the diet that gives you the best chance of resetting that mitochondria. Huh. So that's my stance on it. What's your stance on it?
Well, how long do you need it to be effective?
Depends on how severe is your disease and how long have you been sick.
And how do you guide people in fat choices if some of them are really inflammatory? And
so my favorite keto diet to do, which is even harder than a standard keto diet to do, is the it's called squeaky clean keto. Yeah. So it's an anti-inflammatory keto diet.
Right.
So that's dairy free.
Yep.
It's 100% grass-fed, grass-finished meats.
Yeah.
It's lots of fish, and then it's lots of extra fat. Like the fat source is ghee or coconut oil.
Can you do avocados?
Olive oil? No olive oil?
Olive oil is great.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But you're really, a keto diet tends to give you more of the saturated fats.
Yeah.
With some of the mono unsaturated fats. There's going to be no polyunsaturated fats on this diet.
Yeah.
Like, so it's not easy to do.
Yeah.
But I have seen that in particular change the whole conversation.
So it comes to serotonin and tryptophan.
So let's talk about the mood component.
Carbs are a precursor for those. And when you restrict carbs long term, you can risk a serotonin deficiency and struggle with low mood. And I do a lot of like gut hormone crossover. So I have a lot of folks who have like hormone fluctuations, and carbs can be an essential part to managing the hormone fluctuations that happen luteal phase for people. So if that's on board, I don't see this go well.
When the hormones are dipping.
Really for cycling females. I see it's a lot harder to regulate mood in those folks. Also, I don't have anything to back this up, but I think there are people whose bodies struggle with serotonin. I think they tend to be constipated.
Like genetically, you mean?
I think they tend towards depression.
Enough. They don't have enough serotonin.
It's either with the signaling or production, but I see it in the brain and the gut, and they tend towards depression and they can't poop.
I mean, there's probably a genetic component to
I think so too. Yeah, it's sort of like a type of human I've seen.
Yeah.
They're also not going to do well with this. So I kind of have that on my radar of like, those are the folks, if they've been restricting, I will try to get whole grains with every meal for the poop production, but also for mood support.
So on devil's advocate side about this, which I always think it's good when we don't agree. Like it's easy for us to be like, oh yeah, I agree.
Yep.
On the devil's advocate side, there is the work that's coming out right now by that psychiatrist, Christopher Palmer. Have you guys read his work?
Is he the one who does the keto stuff?
He does do.
Yeah.
He's a tertiary care psychiatrist.
Northeast.
He's in, I think, out of MIT.
Okay.
But he's a tertiary care psychiatrist, which means, there's like your primary care, anxiety, depression. I call that psychiatry light.
Yeah.
And then there's your standard psychiatrist who does good with the drugs. And then there's the tertiary psychiatrist, which means they failed all of the standard guys. Now we're
ECP and stuff.
He sees the most difficult of the difficult.
Yeah.
And he is running, he has just opened the first clinical lab that focuses on nutrition for mental health.
Yeah.
And his main tool is the keto diet.
But do you think those people are really in need of a reset?
I mean, those people are obviously very dysfunctional. There's schizophrenia, psychosis,
so
severe suicidal depression.
Need a sledgehammer approach.
Yes. But we are seeing that this is an intervention that for a fair amount of his population is showing efficacy for mood.
Yeah.
I do agree that a cycling female is almost in a different human body every week. You know what I mean? Like there is that piece, which is very true that I feel like we don't give enough credit to.
Yeah. People feel better if we honor it in all regards. We just don't live in a culture that supports it.
And we are honestly just starting to talk about it. Like we've just admitted that females are different from men in not just their ovaries and their breasts.
Despite them existing for a very long time. It's novel information that, Anyway.
So keto diet is a diet that I absolutely utilize.
Yeah.
There's, the other place I'm utilizing a lot of keto diets is like that chronic fatigue symptom picture.
Yeah.
We talked last episode about a high protein diet. The other thing that these people can really respond well to is a high fat diet to try to stabilize their mitochondria, mainly because of that phospholipid bilayer that we dived into last episode. So that is the other place where I do feel this has a very effective
and neurodegenerative diseases too, right? So, but yeah, it just always seems like so extreme. I think it's like with the AIP diet, where if you really are stuck and there's nothing else is working, or if you have progressive severe disease, I would go for it. But if there's other options, I would definitely try those first.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that we as clinicians know what our dietary tool belt is, because A, patients are coming in and asking us questions. B, sometimes you're looking at their diet and it's not so simple. It's not the person who's drinking, like we talked about Dr. Kapadia's patient last week, where he had a six pack of Coca-Cola every single day.
Yep.
It's not that. It's like they're doing everything right. They're coming in with a perfect diet.
Yeah.
Or, the other place where keto can be effective is it can stimulate weight loss. And when you lose weight, a lot of times you lose that inflammatory predisposition because you've got
insulin resistance.
Right. Yep. You've got fats on fire in your whole body. Your whole body's inflamed.
Grains, though, specifically, I definitely have patients that cut out grains, not carbs, but grains. And wow, but I will say most of them were menopausal, postmenopausal, if they're female.
So you're saying to stimulate health and weight loss?
Yeah. all of it. It's not my like go-to recommendation, but people have found their way to like, you know, the Grain Belly book or whatever, and felt so much better, you know, cutting out grains. They're doing like sweet potatoes or other things that are like carby.
Yeah.
But, you know, that can be a game changer for people.
You know, so most of our audiences are in the States, but we do have this pretty significant growing audience, both in the UK and Australia and Canada. And I will say that when I'm saying grains, I do think about that the U.S. farming practices are so much worse.
Right.
So bad.
We have so much worse regulation than what we have in Europe or what we have in other parts of the world. It is kind of crazy what we allow in our food industry.
Yeah.
And I think what happens
That's
with grains
part of it.
is they are very, very sprayed and genetically modified.
Even the organic.
Right.
Yeah, it's awful what we do to it. And who knows if it's actually the grain or what we do to it. It's probably what we do to it, because most of our patients can go elsewhere and feel just fine.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
When I have patients that go to Europe or go to Italy or France,
I know. They all say that.
You know, okay, do you guys know those cookies that have like the chocolate square on them? They have like the kind of scalloped edges with the little stamp of the guy. You know, they're chocolate.
Yeah. And they're like this delicious buttery cracker.
Yes.
I don't know those. Are those from overseas?
Yeah.
Well, we sell them here, and I've had them here, and I used to love them. Brooke recently brought back a package from France, just like from the drugstore. Like it wasn't a fancy package. They taste completely different.
Same company,
same everything.
Weird.
And I didn't compare the ingredient list, but I was like, this has butter in it. This has butter
instead of sunflower oil or something.
It was delicious.
Yeah.
It tasted not that, you know, that sickening sweet thing that all of our stuff tastes like.
Right.
That blew my mind.
Crazy.
We know this.
Same company.
It's
unfortunate.
It was super.
I mean, I will say that is a piece of it. Like, you know, there is what we have. I now on my feed, I get all these commercials from Thrive where I'm like, oh, these people know my algorithm.
Yeah.
You know?
On what, Instagram?
I'm on Facebook.
Facebook. Okay.
I try to avoid it.
Yeah.
But they're basically, they talk about the amount of chemicals that we have approved to be released.
It's so crazy.
It's wild. And it's not okay.
No.
And so for me, when I hear no grains or low grain,
it's probably the pesticide.
Well, and not even the pesticides, like
GMO,
all of the chemicals.
Yeah.
Inflammation.
Yeah. Our bodies did not evolve to eat this food. And that is why we're less healthy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In all regards. Like
ending on a positive note. It's all downhill from here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. So
no, people are working on cleaning it up.
Are they? I think we're working on moving to Europe. Let's
keep us posted.
Canada or like anywhere else.
I don't know if Canada is better, is it?
I think Canada is probably a little bit better.
You think so? I feel like we would have to go to overseas.
Sure Santa blows into Canada from our end.
I think Europe is really, they took a stance.
Yeah.
And it tastes better.
Is there anywhere warm over there?
Yeah.
Rebecca?
Yeah. Portugal.
See, I haven't traveled. We just go to India and Hawaii. So I need to expand my horizons a little bit.
I'll show you around.
All right. If there's warm places. I've not been to, maybe I need to travel more. I don't get out much.
Don't you like 100 weeks of never getting out?
We go to like 2 places.
Well, surf, like in southern.
Let's do a European carb tour. That's my idea.
You're really going to push Ilana over that and test our theories here.
I will say, Italy has more gluten-free awareness than I think any other country.
Their gluten is so good.
Okay, so let's recap.
Okay.
Pretty good.
We started with fiber: soluble, insoluble, fermentable, non-fermentable. Shout out to psyllium.
We touched on resistant starches just because I didn't get it. Now I get it.
Yep. They resist the small intestine. There we go. Then we moved on to low FODMAP.
Not huge fans, but
lukewarm about
that. Symptomatic results, but then it's hard to introduce feedback into your symptoms come right.
Yep. STD, AIP,
Whole30. Well, we use pretty regularly in our practice.
Yep, like that one.
Mediterranean
always makes an appearance, no matter what diet you're talking about. That one's the best studied. Period.
Yep. And then the pros and cons of keto.
Yep.
Cool.
And then, you know, I will just say the other thing to think about is fasting.
Yeah.
Like prolonged fasting or fasting mimicking.
Yeah. We have a lot to cover in our next installation.
Okay. So for next time.
Totally.
Okay. That was great.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, Turds.
See you next time.
Drop questions on us if you have them. Thanks for joining us today. Stay tuned. We release episodes every 2 weeks.
If you like this episode, please subscribe and don't forget to rate and review us to help spread the Turd Nerd word.